Hey guys, and welcome to the Inventory Remake. The reason I'm doing this is because with how I set up the previous series, then I realized it was becoming more and more tedious with each video, and ultimately I ended up deciding with a community vote to just remake the series again. So welcome to this series. This is basically the same system, so if you already have the system from the previous series, then you don't really need to watch this. But anyway, this system will include the ability to customize UI, stacking items with different stack limits for different item types, and adding a limit to how many stacks of items you can have, as well as saving and loading upon death and rejoining, and being able to equip and unequip armor to your character. So the first thing to do when you create a new base plate is to go up here to File, go to Publish to Roblox As, and you need to publish your place, because we're going to need that later on, whenever we use like data saving and stuff, data store. I'm going to call this Inventory Remake Squared. Put the creator as me. You can put it as a group if you're working under a group. And for now, I'm going to leave everything else as default. And there we go, we've published it. So now you can see it's called Inventory Remake Squared. Okay. So now let's get on to what we're actually making in this series. So we're going to be making an inventory system, obviously, right? But if we go like this, so we go to Starter Pack, we go Tool, we got a part, call it Handle, then we hit play. You'll notice we have this thing down here, and we can hold it, and now we have that part in our hand, that part named Handle. And so this is like the default inventory system that Roblox has, which, I mean, it's great, but it's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It's just kind of, if you add a bunch of these, you can kind of see it's just kind of bland. I mean, you can get as many items as you want. You have a bunch of items, and it shows them up here, and you can search it, and then, you know, that's pretty cool. But items don't stack, and like if you wanted to, I don't know. There's a lot of things you might want in your own custom inventory system if you did not like this for your own game. So what we can do is we can actually disable this default inventory system and use these same tools in our own custom inventory system. So that's what we're going to be doing in this series. So I'm going to delete this tool from Starter Pack because I was just using that as an example. So before we get started with this system, I'm going to create a few sample tools that we're going to use throughout the series just to kind of help test it. So I want to do basically kind of what we did already, where we add a tool. Then this time I'm going to like name them, so I'm going to call this one Sword. Add a part, name the part, Handle. And then I can clone this a couple times, so maybe I'll make one that's rock, and then another one that's health potion, chest plate. And so these are all just basic parts, and they're not actually going to do anything. If we move them into the workspace, we can actually see them. Oh, silly me. Move into the workspace, then I don't know where they are though. Okay, they're all over here. So we can separate them all. And then I might also color them to be different. Okay, just pick some random colors for them. Anyway, so we're going to move these back into Starter Pack for now. And on each of these tools, we're going to do a few different things. So if you click on the top one, Shift, click the bottom one, then I'll select all of them. We're going to add a tag for one thing. This is using the collection service. We're going to add a tag, and we're going to call it Item Tool. So now each of these has a tag on it called Item Tool. And if you want to see, you can like search, you can filter the Explore by tags. You can kind of see that all these have the tag on it. And this is going to help us to identify these tools later on. But we're also going to add some attributes to each of these tools, one of which is going to be the item type, and another one is going to be is droppable. Now I do want to make the note that the tools themselves, if you click on one of these tools, it already has a can be dropped attribute, or not attribute, property. It already has a can be dropped property. But we're going to use our own custom one that works with our system, and it's going to be as an attribute under the tool object. So then for item type, this is going to be essentially the category of item that each thing is, and that's going to be important if we want to, because in this system what we're going to do is we're going to have so items can stack with one another, but then we're also going to have different item types have different stack limits. So say a health potion might be a consumable item, and so it might have a stacking limit of say 16 or something, right? Whereas a sword would be a weapon item, and it wouldn't stack more than one. And a rock might be a resource, so it might stack up more than a health potion, for example. We might call this one special, and it'll probably have it so it doesn't stack either. And then chest plate, we're going to call this one armor. So we have weapon, resource, consumable, special, armor. And you can add whatever categories you want, as long as you define them in the script, as we'll see later. But I'm going to select all of these, make them is droppable, and then just to test the is droppable property later on, I'm going to make so the event item is not droppable. Then I'm also going to go to all these tools, and I'm going to deselect the default can be dropped property. And make sure you do these preparation steps for all your tools. Any new tools you add to the game, make sure you do these preparation steps. So the next thing we're going to do is create the user interface. I'm going to design this basically the same as I did in the original series, but I will walk through how it works. So the first thing I want to do, go over to started GUI, press the plus, screen GUI, and we're going to press F2 to rename this to inventory. And then we can go press the plus again. We're going to add a frame. And this is going to be, I guess we'll start with designing the hotbar. So we'll name this frame as hotbar. We're going to change the anchor point to 0.5, 1. And what this does, if I change the position to 0.5, 0.5, essentially the anchor point is the point at which the scaling and positioning is decided from. So for example, by default it's 0, 0. So that would mean that the positioning is decided based on the top left corner of the frame. Whereas if it was 0.5, 0.5, it would be in the middle of the frame. You can kind of see that little square there too, that indicates it. So you can do kind of whatever, and you can see I can offset it by a random amount too. But since we want the hotbar to be on the bottom in the middle, the easiest thing would be to have it at 0.5, 1. So that way the anchor point is right here in the bottom middle. So then we can change the position to be 0.5, 0.98 maybe? Yeah, there we go. You can see it's just barely offset from the bottom, but it's right in the middle too. That makes it easier to position things. And then for the size, we'll want to make sure this is scale rather than offset. If you don't know what that means, then scale is like a percentage of the screen, whereas offset is an actual pixel amount. And the reason we want scale rather than offset in this case is because we want the hotbar frame to scale to the individual user's screen size rather than to an actual pixel size. That way it appears relatively the same for all users on different devices. So we're going to change the size to be 0.8, 0.2. Okay, that's a bit tall and maybe a little bit wide, so we're going to try that. Might make it a little bit taller. That's not what I meant to do. There we go. And then I might make it a little bit, there we go. I think that size is good. I might move it up a little bit though. So I'm changing that to 0.95. Okay, now the background color, we're going to change this to, I'm going to make it kind of a dark gray. So I'm going to do 50 on each. And then, so right now that looks pretty good, but I kind of want to round the corners off a little bit. So an easy way to do that is to click plus, search up the UI corner. So I'm going to do let's say 0.2. And if you do 0.5, then that's the max essentially. And you can do higher than that, but it doesn't do anything. I don't want to go that high, so I'm going to do like maybe Yeah, 0.1 is probably good. And then, now we need to add probably maybe 10 slots throughout this hotbar. You might have a different amount in your own hotbar, but I'm going to add 10 slots here. The first thing we want to do is add a UI list layout. We're going to change the padding to be 0.05, maybe we'll adjust it later. Change the fill direction to be horizontal. Sort order is fine. Horizontal alignment, we want that to be center. Vertical alignment, we want that to be center. Okay, so what this is going to do is any children inside this hotbar are going to be organized in a list based on these properties we just defined. So if I add a frame, it puts it in there right in the middle because it's set to align in the center. If I duplicate this, it creates more, and notice it adds padding between them. That's what this is, but it's a bit much, so I might make it smaller. But this will make it a lot easier to design our hotbar, so that way we don't have to manually place each one. So I'm also going to add a UI padding inside the hotbar, and that's going to essentially add some wiggle room between the hotbar frame and anything inside of it. So if I do, say, 0.05, maybe 0.1, okay, 0.3, I'll do 0.2 on the top, or on the bottom and on the top. And then for the left, we probably don't want to do nearly as much on the left and right, because if we're using scale, then it's going to be a scale of this amount. So like 0.5 would be half of this, versus on the y-axis, 0.5 would be this much. Anyway, so then we're going to change this frame. We're going to change it to be 1, 1 on the size. And then we're going to add a UI aspect ratio constraint. And we're going to leave this with the default properties, but basically this is going to make so no matter what you set the size to, the ratio of like one side to the other is going to match this ratio. So you can like change that ratio if you want. We're going to leave it at 1, so that way it's a square. And then since this size is 1, 1, it's going to try to scale through the whole entire frame, the whole entire hotbar frame, minus the UI padding. But since it can't, it's limited by the UI aspect ratio constraint to only scale max on the y-axis and then just whatever it can on the x-axis. So basically the same value as the y-axis, if that makes sense. But looking at this, we might want to lower the padding a little bit. There we go. That looks good. Then we can duplicate this and kind of see what that's going to look like. That's 9 items, so we might need a little bit more room. I'm going to change this to 0.7 again. Duplicate it, and there we go. Might change it to be a little bit lower. Like 6.5. Cool. And then you also do want to note that this might have weird issues. Yeah, if you like scale the screen size. So you're going to want to try and find a result that works best for most screen sizes. And you can test that too. If you had to test a device, you can test different screen sizes and what it's going to look like. One thing that might help too is scaling it up vertically. I might change the size of these to instead be based on the x-axis rather than the y-axis. There we go. So now if I scale this, there we go. So then you want to do maybe around there. Try that on some different screen sizes. It should look alright. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, so now we're going to delete all these again because we want to design this one. I'm going to call this one slot 1 for now. We're going to change the color. I might make it a brighter gray. Probably that seems good. I'm going to copy this UI corner. Not that. Copy this UI corner, put it in there. I think that's good. And then add a text label. Call this slot number. We're going to make it have the background color, set it to maybe 100. We're going to copy this UI corner yet again. Might change this UI corner to be 0.2. And then anchor point, do it right in the middle. Position 0.5, 0. And then size they're going to be 0.2, 0.4. That should be good, I think. And then we can go down here. I'm going to choose the Fudoka 1 font because I like that font. And I'll do 1 because that's the slot number. The color is white. Text scaled. Might also add a text stroke to it. That looks pretty good. Another cool thing you can do, UI stroke, and then change this from contextual to border. Then you can change the width of that too. I can add that to other things as well. Oops. Add that to here. That's the wrong one. Add that to here. And add that to here. There we go. It kind of adds almost a cartoonish kind of look, which I think is kind of cool. I'm going to take this slot number, I'm going to duplicate it, Control D. Then I'm going to call this one item count. I'm going to move this to be in the bottom middle, so I'm going to change this to 1. The size is going to stay the same. We're going to remove the background, and we're going to remove these two because they're not needed anymore. I'm going to change the text to be 1 times, just to see how that looks. I also might want this one to be wider, just so we have room in case this goes into double digits. Say it was like 20x, because we don't want that to scale down. Like if this was 0.4, then it scales that down when you put it in two digits. So we want to make sure it's big enough to account for however many digits we're likely going to have. Change that back to 1x. And there we go. I think this is a pretty good slot. So I'm going to duplicate this a bunch of times again. That's 10 slots, so that's how many I wanted. Then we're going to go ahead, for each one, we're going to rename them to be the appropriate slot numbers. And for this last one, I'm going to call it slot 0 because we're going to use the 0 key to access it. And then another thing we're going to want to do, right now they're all in the right order, which is great, but what we want to do is, if you look at this UI list layout, it's set to order them based on the layout order, which is a property that GUI objects have right here. So I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to put the layout order as the slot's number. And this will make so they always stay in the right order no matter what. And for slot 0, I'm going to do 10. So now they're always going to be in the right order. For slot 1, we're going to change the item number. Actually, no, we're not. For slot 2, we're going to change the slot number to 2. And we're going to do that for all of them. And there we go. We have our hotbar designed. So we can minimize that. We're also going to want to add a button to open the inventory. So I'm going to add that real quick. I'm going to do a text button. If you want to use an image, you can use an image, but I'm just going to use this. I'm going to call it open. Change the anchor point. I'm going to change it to 1, 1, so that way it anchors on the bottom right. That way we can offset it from the bottom right and put it around here. So we can do 1, if we do 1, 1, you'll notice it puts it right in the bottom right. Do the size, I don't know what size we want. Let's see. Let's add a UI aspect ratio constraint to make a square. And 0.2, maybe 0.15. It's still pretty big. I think that's pretty good, 0.12. And then we're going to change the position. And we can even just subtract 0.1. Okay, maybe that's too much. We can just drag it. I think that's probably good. Add a UI corner. Change it to 1, just so we can get a perfect circle, because I kind of like that. And then we're going to change the color, make it dark. Change the font, Fudoka 1. Text color to white. The text bag. Text scaled. And you notice it's a little bit big. So in order to kind of give some room for the text, then we're going to add a UI padding. And that'll actually add the padding to the text of the text button, which is kind of useful. can add as much as we need to. I'll do a little bit less. There we go. I think that looks good. So now we have this button right here. Might move it a little bit closer to the hotbar. Okay. So now the next thing to design is the inventory. So we're going to add a frame. Call it inventory. And this time we're going to set the anchor point to right in the middle again. And then we're going to do position to right in the middle as well. And so that'll essentially make so it's always right in the middle, which is kind of useful. So then we change the size to 0.4 maybe, 0.2. No, that's way too small. 0.5, 0.4. And then we change the position again. I think that's pretty good. So we're going to change the color, just kind of keep the same design going. Change it to the dark gray from earlier. Add a UI corner. That's not UI corner. We're going to add a UI corner. That seems pretty good. And then text label. I'm going to call this title. We're going to do 0.5. Yeah, just right in the middle again. 0.5, 0 for the position. So it's in the top middle. Then background transparency. Make the background invisible. Font to Fredoka 1. This is going to just be the title for the inventory. Change the color to maybe yellow. Text scaled, and then text to inventory, and then probably going to want some stroke to make sure it's easier to see, kind of pops out a little bit more. I also forgot, I'm going to add this UI stroke to the button as well. And I may as well add stroke to the text as well. And for the inventory, I'm going to add it to the inventory frame, back to the title anyway. So I'm going to change the size to be, we want it to be pretty big on the x-axis, and we can do pretty small on the y-axis, and that'll make so, since we have the text scale set to true, it'll just scale to whichever axis is like limiting the text size. So we wanted to kind of, that looks pretty good. Well, maybe a bit smaller. So now we have the title, so then we're going to add a scrolling frame in order to contain all the items. And if you don't know what a scrolling frame is, if you search up scrolling frame, you can add one. It's just a frame, but you can scroll through it, right? So we're going to change this anchor point to be in the middle, position it in the middle, change the size to be roughly that much, maybe. And then a little bit more on the x-axis. That looks pretty good. And sadly, the UI corner does not work on the scrolling frame, as you can see. So we're going to have to leave it like this. I'm going to change the color to be maybe 75. I'm going to name this items scroll, because this is going to contain all the items. And then if we add a frame, that frame will show here, and you can see we can scroll and it kind of goes away. We're going to add a UI grid layout. This is similar to the UI list layout, except rather than being horizontal or vertical, it's an actual full grid. So if you have like a bunch of these, you can see it'll, once it gets to the end, then it'll kind of wrap around and start a new row. And so we can change this item scrolling frame. We're going to change this. We're going to change horizontal scroll bar inset to always. Actually, we're going to change that to scroll bar. Basically, what this does is the horizontal scroll bar inset is going to be essentially, if you have a horizontal scroll bar visible and you have this set to scroll bar, then it'll add a little bit of padding enough to give enough room for the scroll bar. And that's the same case for vertical scroll bar inset, but instead it's for the vertical scroll bar instead. So we're going to set that to scroll bar as well. And notice that now it pushed that away because it was too close to the scroll bar. One last thing we want to change with the item scrolling frame, we want to change the automatic canvas size property and change it to Y. And that'll make so, you can't really see here, but it'll automatically scale the canvas size based on the amount of items in here, which I think we should be able to see that if we actually test the game. Let's try it. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working. Oh, we also need to change the canvas size to be 0. There we go. And you can see it actually does work in testing. If we add more items, it automatically scales the canvas size. You notice once the scroll bar pops up, then it suddenly offsets these because the scroll bar is getting in the way. Which is, if we change this to, instead of scroll bar, if we change this to always, then it'll always add that offset. Otherwise, it only adds the offset when you have the scroll bar there. We're going to go to the UI grid layout now. We're going to go to this, so you can change the cell size. So if we change this to 200, then all the cells are bigger. You can also change the padding between them. I would say to use scale for this, but the only issue is then they're not square. And even if you add like UI aspect ratio constraint, then you still have other weird issues, and now they don't like really line up the same way. So the best solution I've found for this is to use offset. So put it back to what it was before. So to use offset, and then just to, in the script, manually adjust the cell size and cell padding based on the screen size. And that kind of helps to make it look the same on all screen sizes. It's a little bit tedious, but it's the best solution I found for that. So now we're going to design what an item looks like inside the inventory. We're going to want it to be pretty similar to these slots, so I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here. And we're going to remove the slot number. Actually, we're not going to remove this. We're going to repurpose it. Call this equipped. Because this is going to be a label that we show if the item is currently equipped to the hotbar, or to, in the case of armor, it might be equipped to the player's character. So the text, we're going to change this to equipped. Change the background color to be green. Change the size. We're going to change the anchor point to be 0, 0 again. This position to be 0, 0. The size to be 1, 0.2. That looks pretty good. I'm also going to remove that. Okay, now that we have this, we're going to rename this to sample. You can see it looks pretty good. It kind of cuts off the count. So there's a couple things I want to do to help with that. So we're going to change the item count. We're going to make it a little bit smaller, because I don't think it needs to be that big. And then we're going to go to the UI grid layout, change the cell padding, make it 10 on the y-axis. And we can adjust that. Maybe 15. Yeah, that looks good. And now we can see it doesn't cover it up anymore. One thing we need to do as well that I forgot about was we need to add images to each of these slots. So for example, slot 1, if we have an item, we're going to want to have an image that displays that item, right? Rather than just the text. So we're going to add an image label. This is a little bit different than I did in the original series. Call it image. Size is going to be maybe that, 0.8. Anchor point, put it in the middle. I'm going to change the background color or background transparency to be invisible, so that way we only see the image. And then we're going to go to slot number. We're going to make this Z index, bring that up, so that way it shows that on top of it. And same thing with item count, just put it higher. Then the image, I'm going to select an image. I'm going to upload a random image. So I have this random bike logo. And if you add a transparent image, then you'll actually... Okay, I'm going to add this random image from another one of my games. And we can see that since the image is transparent, then now it shows it without the background, so that looks pretty good. And we're going to add this image to all the slots in the hotbar. Paste it into selected. So now we can see the images in all of them. And this is just going to be the template image. It's not going to actually show it on their items. So what we can do is, well, before we do that, we're going to go back over here to the sample. We're going to paste this into here as well. We're going to click on these, and we're going to change these to be Z index of high as well, to make sure that those go on top. Now we're going to select all these images, And then we're gonna change these, remove this image. So, minimizing the hotbar, now that we've added those images. So now we have, I think our inventory frame is pretty much complete, but we're gonna need a couple more things. So we're gonna want a little place to like view the armor, and then also I was gonna add an information section right here. So when you select an item, it'll show more information, and then it'll also have a couple buttons for equipping the item and for dropping the item. So let's get started with the armor section first. So we're just gonna take this item, we're gonna take this inventory frame, we're gonna copy it, we're going to paste it inside of itself, and then we're going to rename this to armor, and then we're also going to change the anchor point. We're going to have it be 1, 0.5, so it's on the center on the right. Change the position to be 0, change it to be negative 0.02, comma 0, comma 0.5. I'm going to change the size to be 0.2, comma 0.9. That looks pretty good on the size. I'm going to remove this because we don't want that for this one. Change the name to be armor. Make it a little bit wider. Change the UI corner. Get it to look pretty similar to this one. Then we're going to take this armor frame, we're going to duplicate it, then we're going to rename it to item info, and this time we're going to change the anchor point to be 0 on the x-axis. The position, we're going to make it positive, and then add 1. So that way it's the same offset, but it's on the other side. We're going to change the size, we're going to make it a little bit shorter, probably not that wide. Change the title, information, then I might go to the armor, I might scale it down to match right there, or even scale it up to match fully. Then one thing, I don't like how this is shorter than this, the text, the titles. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change the Y size. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this one to be smaller. I think that looks better. So then for the item info, we're going to take this title, we're going to copy it. We're going to rename this to item name. Change the color, orange, maybe a little bit brighter. That looks pretty good. I'm going to change the text to be no item selected. And then move it down. Actually, before that, we're going to change the anchor point to 0.5, comma 0. And now we're going to move it down to be 0. We're going to change the Y position, and we're going to move it down to be 0.1 maybe. That looks good. We're going to duplicate this, and we're going to rename it to item desk, short for description. For the text, we're going to put it as some lovely lorem ipsum. We can change the color to be white. And we want to scale this down. Leave some room for some buttons. This text is a little bit long. I'm going to try and shorten that a little bit because I don't think any of our descriptions are going to be quite that long. There we go. And that gives us kind of a good sense of what that's going to look like with the item description there. And then we're going to add 2 buttons. I'm going to name this one to equip. I'm going to change the color, make it green. I'm going to add the UI stroke to it. Add the UI corner. I'm going to change the UI corner to be 0.2. Change the text to be white, to be Fredoka 1. Turn on text scaled. Change the text to equip. Add a small outline. And then add a UI padding. Add a little bit on all of the sides. We want to position it now. The anchor point, I'm going to do 0, 1 for the bottom left. Position is going to be, if we do that, then it'll put it right in the bottom left. We want the size to be just barely under half. And maybe like that. I'm just going to drag it and move it around. So now we're going to duplicate this. and drag it over. I'm going to rename this new one to drop, change the color to be yellow. Actually, we're going to change it to be more like orange. Do the same color as up here, just because. Change the text to be drop. And there we go. We're going to go to the item description. I'm going to duplicate that one more time. We're going to add a little information text down here. This will come in handy later on. Right now it might not make much sense. We're going to call this thing instructions. And the default text, this won't be visible by default. We're going to make it visible later on with the code. And name the text to that. Press the slot to equip to or the corresponding keyboard key. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to select a slot. It's going to show it here. We're going to press equip, and then this is going to pop up telling us what to do to equip it. So then we press the slot down here, and it'll equip it to that slot. So now I'm going to go over to armor. I'm going to add a frame. I call this inner, because it's just inside, so it's inner. Very creative naming, I know. Might try what color. Let's see. What color is this? I want to use the same color as that. Item scrolling is 75. So make this 75. 0.5, 0.5, 0.8, 0.9. We're going to scale that to adjust to our needs. Take the UI corner, paste that inside. So one major mistake I may have made is I forgot to make the hotbar slots and the inventory slots as buttons, because right now you can't actually click them, and that's going to, like, see how this is a button, you can see if you hover over it kind of changes color, same with these. So we're going to need to make these into buttons. So what we're going to do to kind of convert them, it's going to be a little bit tedious, but not too bad. We're going to do a text button because we don't need the image. So we're going to do slot 1. We're going to go inside here, we're going to copy everything from here, paste it into here, and then we're going to go ahead, we need to copy the properties too. So you just kind of do it bit by bit, and you'll get there eventually. And then if we go to, we want to go to the text, we want to remove that. We already have text on it. I think it's already good like that. Yeah, that looks good. So now we're going to delete all these again. So we have our new text button one. Now we can see if we hover over it, it actually goes dark. Duplicate it again a bunch of times. Rename them again. And then we're also going to change the layout orders again. Cool. And then we're going to change the slot numbers. Now we need to do the same thing with this thing. Nope. We need to do the same thing inside the item scroll with a sample. So we're going to do an item button, or we're going to do a text button, sample, and then we're going to copy everything from inside of it, paste into, then we're going to copy some properties over. I don't think we'll need to copy too much. We're going to remove the text. I think that should be it. Remove this one. There we go. Now they're all buttons. Now that we have that, now we can finish the armor. So go to the inner. We're going to want to add a head slot, chest slot, and a feet slot. So we're going to copy, I might copy one of these. We're going to change the scale. We're going to change the anchor point to be in the middle, the top middle. Position to be also in the top middle for now. And then the size to be 0.9, 0.8, 0.7. Change the position, move it right there. That looks pretty good. Change the name of it to head. the slot number is going to be title. Change it to head. Remove the background. Remove these. Change the size to be 1, 0.4. Change the 0.4 to be a little bit smaller. And then the item count, we're going to remove that. And there's our head slot. And we're going to duplicate that. And actually, what I could do to make this easier, UI list layout, become vertical, yeah, horizontal alignment, center, vertical alignment, center, padding, 0.5. There we go. And then head, chest, feet, and then we're going to name this one to chest, name this one to feet. Then we're going to change the layout orders. Layout order is going to be 0, 1, 2. So that way they stay in that order. Alright, so the last thing we need to do for this episode, for the UI in general, is we're going to add a little error text here at the top. And it's just going to be an error message we can repurpose and use for a few different things, such as like if the user's inventory is full or if they try to drop an item that's not set to be droppable. So we're going to click on the GUI, add a text label, call it error. We're going to position this, or we're going to set the anchor point to be in the middle, the bottom. We're going to set the position to be 0.5. We'll try 0.1. We're going to just move it down. That works. Okay. We're going to set the background transparency to 1, the size to 0.6, 0.1. It's a little bit big. I'm going to make it shorter, and then I'm going to make this 0.5. And then the font for Docker 1, text color 1,0,0 to be red, text scaled. This is a sample error message. You can't do that. I'm going to add a text stroke, so we're going to make this to 0, the text stroke transparency, and the color to white, so it pops out pretty good. And then by default, we're going to make this invisible, and we're also going to go over to the item info, and I'm going to make the instructions invisible by default as well. And there we go. That is the end of this episode. We have completed all of the UI for this series. In the next episode, we'll likely get started with some of the server-side setup for the code for the inventory system. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm excited to make this new series. And I'll see you guys next time.